This is the Brown Duke Gun Show. My name is JP Garcia, here today with a very special guest, Eugene Kwarteng. He is one of my good friends here, active competitor shooter guy. He does a lot of things. And so without stealing his thunder, Eugene, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, where can I start? I do a lot of things. Some people will say too much, but why not? You only have one life, so hey, maximize it. But I was originally born in Ghana, West Africa, but I've been in the U.S. since I was about 6 months old, and I grew up in Texas. And I went to school at Louisiana Lafayette, played football there, met my wife there. Now Lafayette, Louisiana is home, So here I am here, 20 plus years later. And still loving it,
Yeah.
But let's get on to the shooting part. I mean, it really started. Gosh, what year was that? Was it?
Well, see, so we moved here I met you in 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
Yes. And I remember hearing about you. You were interested in doing some training for that, and I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, man, that's a thing? Okay, cool. This is great. So the little kid in me was like, okay, this is going to be awesome. Let's do it. And so we started and we assessed what your needs were based on, what you want to do to enhance your performance. And, we focused a lot on footwork. And so, getting the repetition and trying to visualize how this would apply to a stage, I think that was the big part of trying to create that stimulus so we can get your body to adapt to it. Because that way, the last thing you want to think about is your feet. What do your feet need to do?
Right.
You just focus on the shooting part. And so that was a really, really fun process. And through that, I started getting the bug. I was like, man, I can see myself doing this. Okay, this is big. Okay, all right. Okay, cool. And then it just evolved from there.
Sure.
And then you got me in there.
Yeah. And
I'll never forget the first time I shot one of your competition guns. I mean, when he put it in my hands, I started sweating immediately. I was like, so much power. I didn't know what to do. It was just, and it was scary. I was scared as hell. I was like, man, what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great first introduction. And then, we started working on just fundamentals, a lot of fundamentals, because I believe with anything, especially something that's complicated like that, we have to break it in pieces.
Sure.
With movement and or just the mechanics of the actual shooting. So I really enjoyed that part. The process was great. And then getting the repetition, the dry firing, learning how to do that. And then, slowly working into where I could at least, navigate well in a competition.
Sure.
I didn't win anything, but I was just happy just being able to get out there, being safe and being able to be proficient. Mm-hmm. And then, I feel like I'm not in a rush, so I have plenty of time in my life to work on, just working my way up slowly. So
yeah, I created another addict.
Yes,
that's essentially what it is.
JP is, you're the guy, but I appreciate it though. It's been great.
Yeah, no, and all the training that you gave me with regard to the strength training, the agility training, all that stuff. Super helpful to my game. I do want to use that as a way to parlay back and get a little bit more about your background. So you talked about where you grew up and where you went to school, but really you made a career out of training people, right? Strength training, agility training, sports training, lots of different training. You do Tai Chi, you teach Tai Chi,
yes.
These types of things. So very holistic. Body mechanics, body strengthening. I know you competed in, different CrossFit type games or stuff like that. So really, seen by a lot of people, including myself, as an expert in just, body strengthening, body mechanics, how to get stronger, how to get faster, those types of things, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm always working on refining that process. So I feel like I hadn't reached a limit because there's always a way to get better, right?
Sure. Well, yeah, and especially I watch your Instagram videos. You're always doing something new,
Trying, man. I want it to be entertaining. I've kind of moved towards making them a little more entertaining,
Sure.
fitness related, but entertaining. and somewhat informative.
Yeah, I do like the merch though.
The merchandise, Super X,
the Super X stuff that you do.
That's my newest addiction, and oh man, it's a brand that they make everything from scratch, and it's superhero inspired. So for me, being a big kid, I had to become an ambassador to just pay for this habit, and so now making the content for them, it's fitness related. So I have to see it as a challenge to myself. Okay, can I pull this off? And how would that character technically train theoretically if they were real? So it's been a good creative outlet for me.
I like it. I like it.
It's fun.
So going back to shooting. Okay. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, even when we were talking off air about this, was, preparations, what body preparations, what workouts can people do to get their body ready for shooting? And so I think we can talk about two different types of shooter, right? First is the beginner, right? The person who is just, is new to firearms. Let's just keep it at pistols for now, right? And maybe they're having trouble with recoil control, and they're having trouble with their grip strength, and a lot of things that, as you know, when you were a new shooter, there were things that you had to dial in. But the fact that you had such a good physical starting point, right, I think helped you out a lot. Part of recoil control obviously is body mechanics and placement, sure, but to that end, is there any, now that you're kind of past that beginner stage, right, and you're a competitor, do you see any types of workouts, exercises, body movement, stretching that could help a new shooter maybe with a recoil control or with just their body mechanics in general to be prepared to shoot a pistol?
Well, I would say you start off by learning how to stand, and because your body, you can use your whole body to create leverage. Because when you're out of position, the recoil will throw you off, and that can affect your accuracy, as we already know this. But I think learning how to stand is important. And then going into the grip control and dealing with the recoil, what I found is the challenge is knowing how much grip to use and when to dial in grip and when to dial back a little bit, because if you grip too hard, it affects the angle of the wrist, and then you're not going to have the accuracy that you want if you just death grip the whole time, right?
Sure.
And you run out of gas a lot sooner.
Right.
And so, and then another part of this is what type of gun do you have? Does it fit your hands well?
Right.
Sometimes, like for me, I have big hands. So if I used a gun that had a small handle, that would be difficult for me to try to manage.
Sure.
So trying to find a good balance between where you're not having to over grip a gun just to keep it straight.
Right.
I think that's a big part of having the right tools for you, for your body. And as far as managing grip control, as far as dealing with the endurance, a few things that a person could do, like if they didn't go to a gym at home, you can utilize a tennis ball to work on, individual fingers or just squeezing it as a whole. And there's a lot of things you can do that require squeezing, but what we don't talk about is the muscles that open the hands. And that's just as important as the muscles that close the hands. So the extensors, you can take a rubber band and put it around, probably that first joint of the fingers, and you just practice opening and closing. If you don't have a rubber band, you can get a bucket of rice or sand. This is what baseball players use. Think pitcher workouts.
Right.
You place your hand on top of the bucket of the sand or the rice or whatever you use, and you close the hand. And as you open it, you slowly submerge your hand to go deeper into the bucket. You can do, a few reps of that just to work on overall hand strength and resilience. Those are just a few items. I was looking up one thing. If you didn't have anything like that, you could take a towel, like a towel, bucket of water, and just practice wringing it and squeezing all the water out, alternating directions. That's a good one too. And obviously hanging from pull-up bar. If you have kettlebells, you can practice holding them in different ways, like a farmer's carry, or if you turn the kettlebell upside down, you hold it by the fingertips, or even, just to work on that different aspects of those grip. We could talk about grip exercise for days, but I'm just trying to illustrate things that you might be able to relate to whatever situation you're in, because not everybody can go to a gym.
Sure.
Some people might have just minimal stuff, but you can find a tennis ball, you can use a wet towel. You know,
The rubber bands are
rubber
really good
bands are easy to get to. So just those little things
Yeah.
would be good for overall maintenance.
The rubber band one resonates with me a lot because when, you know, even as a competitor, I was dry firing a lot, right? You know, as you get more serious about it, viewers know, and you know for sure that practice is key, right? And, you know, just dialing in your fundamentals, all that stuff. Well, you know, when you're dry firing, you're doing a lot of that gripping action. And the problem with that is that if you don't do the reverse, what I found for me is that I got a lot of tennis elbow feeling, right? And, you know, this was back when we lived in Texas and I had to go to somebody and they said, yes, you had to do the reverse part of that. And it wasn't till I started doing those rubber band exercises, the ringing stuff that you're talking about, you know, the forearm thing, you know, the it's like a rolling weight thing or whatever.
Right.
Doing the reverse movements, that's what really started to get rid of that tennis elbow. And it's super important, right? And I think, you know, the fact that, you know, what I'm trying to say is if you start doing that proactively, then you're not going to have those weird injuries as you progress, right?
Yes, exactly.
So-
Plus, you know, I found that before I started doing the extensor work, when I was like, after a while, you get several 100,000 rounds in, I feel like sometimes my trigger finger would just lock up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then that would affect your just ability to, you know, in your speed. So I was like, okay, there's an imbalance there.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything has a yin and yang. So we squeeze, but we have to learn how to open as well.
Right.
You know?
Well, and that's the weird thing about when you start to try to go fast, right? And we can get into that now as you delve into the competitive world, right, where you're really trying to put, you know, rounds down range on a small target very quickly. You find out that the same mechanics that you use just standing and shooting are very different than you would if you want to shoot fast and accurately. And one of the key things is that it really matters how you're gripping the gun, how much pressure you have on your shooting hand versus your support hand, right? And a lot of the top shooters say that really when you're on your trigger finger side, you want to just kind of hold the gun, but not super, super hard, right? So that you still have mobility in that trigger finger, so you can, you know, actuate the trigger really fast. And on the other side, you want to really crush the gun, right?
Yeah.
So your recoil control when you're shooting fast comes from your support hand, and it's easy to say. It's hard to really do until you practice it and you focus on it and that kind of thing, right? So, but carrying now into the competition world, so. In competition, we do a lot of course, the grip work. That's very, you know, that's still fundamental. But then we do a lot of movement, and that's really where you helped me out a lot when we first met. Right? Is the, you know, the type of training, the type of you know, start, stop, short movement, short bursts, as Max would say, right? Short burst movements, and so, you know, the question from me then is, for somebody who's training that, right? Because we have at the club, we have a lot of people who are now training up for a match that we're going to do in September, of all ages, you know, mid 30s all the way up to retiree age, you know, 60, 70 plus, right? How would you recommend those shooters prepare their body from a stretching workout standpoint, you know, things that they need to do, body maintenance standpoint to be ready for a practical shooting match?
Well, to my understanding, those matches usually last a few days, 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And so you're going to have some element of endurance. So I would recommend some type of low impact cardio, you know, even if it's just walking every day, treadmill, or even a rowing machine. If you don't have access to any of those things, just going on a walk every day is good. Just because you get used to the endurance, you're going to build up that cardiovascular fitness. So that way you can be consistent every day.
Right.
And then on the mobility side, whatever stretch routine works for them. Typically, you want to do stretches that address your hips, your lower back, and your shoulders. And then obviously you want to stretch your hands out. They have good wrist mobility drills as well. Talk about for more of the experienced ones, just for overall maintenance.
Right.
Those are things you can do, you know, obviously starting now, but, you know, on the nights of in between days of shooting, just have a little maintenance routine that you would do that evening to get you ready for the next day. Obviously, nutrition is a big part of that, maintaining a good balance of hydration, particularly hydration, especially if it's hot.
Yeah.
You want to be able to, hydration is more of like a state of being. You don't want to do it just for that occasion. You want to just do it more consistently as a lifestyle so you can keep that equilibrium.
Right.
Because that controls the inflammation. So that way you avoid some of those unnecessary overuse issues that come from inflammation because the body wasn't, in an equilibrium state.
Right.
As far as people that are just getting into it or this is going to be their first big one, just continue the mechanics, the dry firing, because that's a lot of repetition. Movement with dry firing is really, really good because you're getting your agility work and incorporating the use of the gun as well.
Yeah.
And going into that as far as like learning how to stop your posture is going to be a big key. Maintaining consistent posture. Because obviously, if you lean too far forward, you're not going to be balanced. So if you had to stop, you would fall forward, and that affects your shot.
Right.
If you're too upright, then it might make it a little bit challenging to actually react and move. So it's like, where's that sweet spot based on the person's posture to where you can change direction efficiently?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we worked on a lot. We worked on controlling posture, which allows you to maintain balanced footwork. So you can stop on a dime and turn on a dime, but maintain your posture. So that way, when you have your arm out, you have the gun out, and it's not going to, drop and go all over the place.
Yeah, that was a big problem when we started. Is that I'd have these just hard stops. I just one step, boom, and the gun would go
right.
It'd make this big U, and getting. Learning how to hit the brakes a little bit sooner so that the gun was level. I remember working on that. You tied bands to my waist and made me stop, sooner.
Kind of like landing a plane. It's like we had to just ease in. And so, of course, it happens at a little more of a rapid rate. But we had to pinpoint where it was happening first, and then we would work that space.
Right. And it's only a step or two.
Yeah.
It's only a step or two. You made me, I remember, instead of a hard stop, you made me take 3 steps or whatever. Or, in the distance of a 1 step made me take 3 steps. Just pop, come in. So
keeping those feet underneath you.
Right. And then the posture was huge. Even when we were practicing leaning, having that trail foot go backwards instead of leaning over, it kept the gun and kept me more straight up and stuff like that. So that was another good one. I'm trying to think. The cones, the ladder. We worked that speed ladder a lot.
We did a lot of that.
Yeah,
working on the different progressions. 1 foot, 2 foot, and then going from multiple directions. That was really good because we did a lot of that. Also, one thing to caution is we have to be careful of not overdoing it too,
right?
Because I remember we ended up getting into some light chronic injuries there, and I think it was just more of an overuse thing. So when you get into it, we don't have to go necessarily every day, all day. Just maybe twice a week. I'm talking about for a person who's just beginning.
Yeah,
just to work on that aspect, and that way you don't end up any kind of overuse injuries.
Sure. Now, we can take this a step further because I had a big injury in the middle of the 2019 season that you helped me rehab through. For those who don't know or remember, I broke my ankle late 2018 or early 2019, I forget. And I was on the shelf for a while, and I remember it was very difficult for me to come back because I had I had mobility problems on the right side because of the ankle I broke, but then the left side then had compensatory injuries, and so I had to go through all of that. And the one thing that you put me on at that point, and this is a note for anybody who has injuries, don't sleep on this, is Tai Chi. The Tai Chi movements that you did, because you're a Tai Chi instructor also.
Yes, and
you completely, when I came back, I remember you limited me to Tai Chi. That was it. And we would be at late night in Reds doing Tai Chi.
Yep.
And just the static flowing nature of the stretches and the movements got my body more used to just moving again. Right. And so for me, that was really helpful to just get back started, And so for folks who may have injuries, recovering from injuries, maybe speak to that and say, how maybe the Tai Chi or maybe something similar where it's just very gradual, slow movements, no weight, not a lot of abrupt movements, it can help you.
Well, the biggest part about that is it kind of covers a lot of our bases, where you're learning how to move forward and backwards, sideways, but you're also rotating. Tai Chi is very rotational. So you're getting movement from all angles, particularly in the ankles and hips.
Right.
And you're also learning how to do it and where you're relying more on your structure instead of your muscles. Because with Tai Chi, you can't over muscle anything. If you over muscle anything, you generate tension, and that can, it's like having the brakes on. So you learn how to move without the brakes on. And so I would say the biggest benefit was because we did all that moving back and forth, sideways, rotating, pivoting, in a slow way, it gave all your connective tissues chance to kind of recover as well. And so that helped stimulate your central nervous system to where whenever you were healed and you're able to just get back to moving fast, it wasn't a huge, there wasn't any downtime. Your body is almost like it picked up where it left off.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So you allow the tissues to heal, but you're still moving it without just sitting still, because when you have an injury like that, you don't want to just sit on the shelf or sit on the couch, because then you have muscle atrophy, and then you end up with a longer list of issues than you had before that started. So you want to find a way to move in a way that doesn't agitate, but still will promote some type of healing.
Yeah. Very good. Well, look, I'm a believer. It helped me. So, for those out there who are nursing an injury, just coming back from an injury, check out Tai Chi, and if you're in the area, hit up Eugene. He can help you out with that for sure.
I mean, it's one of those things that it's the only thing that I found to learn how to relax, because, in my life, I'm very rigid, stiff or whatever. So it's one of the things that I found that I've actually learned how to relax, because I'd always get pissed off when people say, oh, you need to just relax, but nobody could articulate exactly how. And with that, I've learned how, and I can instruct you on, okay, when there's something going on in the area, how do you really let that go? You know, so it helps you break all that down. So,
it's very good. Yeah. So very good. So I think that's a really good primer for folks who are looking to improve their body in service of becoming a better shooter. Do you have any other tips or tricks that you could think of for either a new shooter or an experienced shooter, somebody looking to compete? Just any other tips or tricks that you want to go over, before we close today?
Well, the best thing you can do is find somebody that does it. And if you're fortunate, we're very fortunate that we've been able to work with some of the best shooters in the world, with Max and, hell, even Brandon. I mean, he's climbing up there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Blake, all those guys, they're right here in this area, which is a gift. So if you can make some time somehow to get with a good instructor, finding a good teacher is a way to learn and bring out the best in you. So, find a good instructor and then learn those fundamentals and then rep and master those fundamentals. That's how you level up.
Yeah.
So finding somebody that does it and who's good at it is a good way to go.
For sure. And if you need a trainer, go to Reds. Eugene's over there. Eugene, what's your socials? How can people find you?
On Instagram, I'm EK Prime. TikTok, same thing, EK Prime, and Facebook as well.
Okay.
So,
well, very good. Well, thank you for this. Thanks for coming out today, and we will talk again next time.